Hi guys, so today I'm really excited to talk about The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman, which is a new book in a new trilogy by him, which is set in the same universe as His Dark Materials, which follows the story of a young girl in Oxford called Lyra Belacqua. I won't be spoiling any of this book in this video or any of the previous ones from His Dark Materials, but I will be drawing comparisons between them. This book isn't a prequel as such, but it does take place ahead in time of His Dark Materials. It takes place when Lyra is a baby, so although she is a very central character to the story, she's not exactly an active participant. If you haven't read His Dark Materials, you can absolutely read this one first, since it takes place before the events of Northern Lights, so that's absolutely no problem at all. And this story has a protagonist called Malcolm, and he's an innkeeper's son, and he is just such a charming character. Lyra is an amazing protagonist for His Dark Materials, but she can be quite devious at times, and it all helps to make her more realistic, but she's not always the most likeable character, whereas Malcolm is just such a lovely boy. You can't help but be drawn in by him and genuinely care about him. I don't feel like there's much need for me to explain the story of this novel a great deal, and if you want to know a bit more about why I think Philip Pullman's a great author in general, then I'll link up here and also in the description my video about Northern Lights, which is a bit more general and it doesn't spoil that book at all. So everything I say there is relevant for this book also, because it is written in quite a similar style, and it's one that puts the plot at the forefront. It's very accessible for children and teen readers, but it still questions some of the most profound issues that face humanity, and for that reason I think it is equally suitable for almost all ages. Maybe not really young children, but if you're an adult and you don't really read young adult fiction or children's novels, which I don't particularly myself, I would still absolutely recommend this. It has so much extra, I think, to offer adults. The His Dark Materials trilogy centres on religion, and especially religious corruption, and that's definitely true of this book as well. It's set 10 years before the start of Northern Lights, and therefore some of the scientific elements aren't really in play yet. In this book, the religious aspects are much more about the eradication of heresy and the lengths that the magisterium, which is a thinly veiled allusion to the Catholic Church, will go to establish absolute control, which you can see they have achieved by the start of Northern Lights. It's very disturbing, and I think it reflects the increasing amount of allegations of sexual abuse within the Catholic Church that I think emerged, or started to really emerge, only after His Dark Materials was finished. Philip Pullman has said that this series could aptly be called His Darker Materials, and I certainly wouldn't argue with that. However, I think although his criticism of religious institutions is as sharp in this book as it was in His Dark Materials, there's a kindly convent of sisters in this novel, which I think shows that he's not necessarily trying to attack religious individuals, but rather the controlling systems of oppression that are sometimes at the top of religious institutions. The plot of His Dark Materials really centres around the idea of the biblical story of the fall, and this one is absolutely influenced by biblical stories as well, particularly the flood, and there's even an allusion to Noah's Ark in Malcolm's canoe, Belle Sauvage. In His Dark Materials, there are references to the melting of the polar ice caps, which caused the displacement of the armoured bears, and I think there are even more urgent references to climate change in this novel, which fall in line with our increasing understanding of climate change over the past 20 years. This novel is packed with unpredictable weather and devastating natural disasters, and also just the perennial human ability to shrug off these warning signs. And I found this book when I was reading it particularly pertinent because even over the last few months there have been some incredibly devastating hurricanes and freak natural disasters which make it increasingly difficult to ignore the reality of climate change. As with the whole of His Dark Materials, this book is absolutely overflowing with literary allusions, which is gold dust to someone like me who revels in that kind of thing. I think there's particular debt owed to Spenser's The Fairy Queen, but also to more classical sources of adventure and homecoming like Homer's Odyssey. I've been waiting for this book for many years, and I am delighted to say that it absolutely lived up to expectation for me. A lot of the books that I read are intelligent and profound in a literary sort of way, using clever stylistic devices or language to convey their point, which sometimes also obscures their point. And there's nothing wrong with this, I really enjoy those books, but there's something really refreshing to read a book that can be as intelligent as these ones are, but they convey all this through amazing storytelling. I'm already extremely excited to read the second book in this new trilogy, and I think it's set quite a bit ahead in time compared to this one, so I think it will be just as fascinating. And I'd love to hear what you think of this book if you've read it already or if you're planning to. But I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.